Describe in one word what being an immigrant means to you.
Resistance.
Relentless.
Dreamer.
Struggle.
Fighter.
Perseverance.
There's a place where life is simple. People are perfect.
I guess just like a really nice middle-class house with like 2.5 kids, a dog, a cat, and like a lawn or something.
So I had my own experience where recently I tried to buy my own car and I didn't know it, but I got rejected by a lot of credit companies because I'm not a citizen. They wouldn't let me have a loan because they had no guarantee that I would be able to remain in the country. So like the system itself is stopping you from buying a house, buying a car, and getting all the things that other people already have, even when you have the money.
You tell someone that there is an American dream and you get them to believe it. So even though it's inaccessible to them, so they work towards that, and when they don't achieve it, they blame themselves. And if you blame yourselves, you think, oh, I need to work even harder to achieve the American dream. So you keep on working harder and harder and harder to achieve this dream that you can never achieve. And the only people who get something out of it is like the big businesses and like the corporations, and like it's not the immigrants or like our communities that are the ones benefiting from the fantasy.
I mean, like, even despite knowing about the inaccessibility and all of it, I mean, I still wholeheartedly like believe that the American dream is accessible for me personally. I do, however, know that like it's just going to be 10 times harder for me to achieve it.
Remember the poll numbers. Okay, so remember this. So listen. Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
The thing that scares me the most about what he says, the comments he makes, is that he's just one guy, right? But he's the mouthpiece for this large community of people that feel the same way he does. And the reason he's president is because the things he was saying resonated with people who voted for him. So yeah, the comments were like horrible, obviously, but he's speaking for other people who feel the exact same way. And when you think about that, like, that's scary. He's president because the things, like these horrible things he's saying, like people are like, yeah, he's right. So that's what like makes me afraid.
I can only speak about myself and how I felt when he attacked Muslims and Syrians. When he put the Muslim ban, he put majority Muslim countries minus Saudi Arabia, and he was like, 9/11, and they're terrorists. Why did you not include the country that the terrorists mostly originated from? Because one, he's after his pockets, and two, it's not about Muslims. It's about what's going to profit him the most.
We are protecting ourselves without violating the principles of Christian decency.
Thousands of criminal aliens
pouring into our country.
They're not people, these are animals. Our country will be overrun.
It's absolutely who I am. After fully like wearing my identity, my immigrant identity on my sleeve and my heart, it's what I want to do in my life. Like, I want to work in immigration. It's everything that I wake up every single day and I'm like, I don't want anyone to feel the same way that I did just because based on where they lived, their economic status, their gender, their race, their sex, their religion, no one should ever be persecuted because of things they cannot control. And not to say that I was, but the racism and the discrimination and the prejudice against every single minority in this country, for every marginalized and underrepresented groups, is so unbelievable when it will only benefit one type of people, the middle, and I don't want to say who, but I think we all have an idea.
Well, we know the space wasn't built for us.
Right.
And we also know that it's still not tailored for us. So when I think of like any of these, like even when I think of going to school, going to college, I don't feel like this is where I belong necessarily. Like I can't feel that same type of pride because I know that this is not, like, had the founders of these spaces been here, I would not have been the person they would have wanted here. So I kind of still have that invader mindset, and I don't know if that's something that's ever going to go away.
So with my identity, when I think about myself, I don't think about myself as American, but I also don't think about myself as Peruvian, so I'm from Peru. But the funny thing is, when I talk to my family in Peru, to them I am an American because I was raised here and I have these American customs. But when I talk to an American, I'm not American either. So it's like I don't know who I am, but also nobody else does either.
Get the ice out of here! Tell ICE! Get the ice out of here!
And a long-standing contract with ICE to hold up to 800 illegal immigrants in its local correctional facility. In turn, the county receives $117 per day per detainee, or about $40 million a year.
Essex County Jail is located right here in Newark, and it's one of the county jails here in New Jersey that has a contract with the federal government to detain people who are in immigration proceedings. So let's be clear, this is a jail. This is a really difficult place to be. And it's not only a jail, but it's a jail that's had serious conditions problems. As you mentioned, the Office of the Inspector General for the Department of Homeland Security, the very federal agency that is seeking to deport people, came and inspected this facility and found serious problems with it, including feeding people moldy bread, spoiled meat, leaks in the ceilings, and abuses of solitary confinement. For example, they've been putting people into solitary confinement as a punishment for disciplinary infractions before even having a hearing to determine whether someone committed the disciplinary violation. I could go on, but there are very serious violations.
Newark is a sanctuary city, and the fact that we have a detention center, like right down the street, essentially, in a sanctuary city sends a really big message that no matter, like, it's just cruel and unnecessary, and it's really scary for anyone to be living in a city that's supposed to be safe when you have a building that says, no, you're not.
Yeah. And even for me, like, I live in a town that's a lot whiter, it's like 70% white, but for Newark, like, I work here, but I always think of it as a very diverse community. Like, this is more of a community of immigrants and people of color. So the fact that the detention center exists here instead of like a very like white privileged town is shocking to me, or I was surprised when I heard about it, because like I think of this as a safe space. But I guess that's what we all need to realize, that just because we are the people who inhabit a space does not make it safe for us.
I just learned about the Newark Detention Center recently, but I like Zoar wasn't really shocked, just kind of because I had heard a lot about ICE and their involvement like in Ironbound from my friends in high school that were that lived in Ironbound. They used to tell me stories like not necessarily affecting them, but affecting like the people in the neighborhood. So I necessarily wasn't shocked, but like Zoar, it's kind of controversial that like being in a city of diverse individuals that you'd have a detention center that says like we don't really accept you that way.
I couldn't be more impressed with the compassionate work that our Customs and Border Protection are doing here at this facility.
Imagine traveling thousands of miles in grueling and dangerous conditions because you have no other option, only to be separated from your family, from your children, thrown into overcrowded cages, denied a shower, toothbrush, and yes, Mr. Chairman, drink water out of the toilet.
This whole debate is that by focusing in on the details of the terminology and what one word means, we are going to miss the the really important issue here, which is what's actually happening at our border, what's actually happening in our detention centers here in New Jersey. What we're seeing is that large groups of people are being arrested, are often being denied due process in a number of different ways. And as I mentioned before, we're even seeing large groups of children being held in Border Patrol facilities with poor sanitation, without good medical care, without the critical care that they need for psychological and mental health care that they need for the trauma they've experienced both on their journeys and because of the violence that they are fleeing in their countries of origin.
I think she's right. I think it started off like this, and it's slowly escalating. More and more people are being detained. The conditions are getting worse. They're apparently talk about the people being moved to military bases. So I think it's very probable. I think it's very similar to what's happened in the past.
In the 5 years it's been around, DACA has had a big impact on young undocumented immigrants. A survey of DACA recipients found nearly 70% got a job with better pay. More than 60% opened their first bank account. Nearly 65% bought their first car, and a similar share say that they've pursued educational opportunities they previously couldn't.
Okay, so I definitely think we need like a path to citizenship, and so I've heard the argument a lot of times that undocumented immigrants don't pay taxes and we don't contribute to the economy. But as someone that has DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, I do pay taxes, and I pay like $500 every year and a half so I can actually work. So that's a lot of money that we are contributing to the United States economy, and we would contribute so much more if you would just allow us to at least like work in ways like, you know, like give us all work permits and make it safer. Like a lot of us are out here driving without licenses, and that makes it unsafe for us, but also for the other people that are on the road. So if you give us this path to citizenship and open up these doors, I know there are like millions of us who want to contribute and make this country better. We're here to work, not to like take your money, not to take your jobs, because matter of fact, we're already here, like you need us.
Undocumented people contribute so much, and our economy capitalizes off of them unethically too, especially. So they're already being exploited and they're contributing so much to our system, and then to pay even like when we're talking about deporting them, even from an economic standpoint, like not only are we losing people who are contributing to our economy, we're also then gonna pay even more money to send them. Like at that point, it's clearly an issue of like bigotry and racism and xenophobia, because it's economically harmful for the country to actually send undocumented people out, but we're fighting for it anyways. And then my second note in all of this, like my general thoughts on this, is that when people are coming into our country, a lot of the times it's because of the instability that America has actually contributed to in these places. So I think it's really hypocritical of us to actually cause the problems these people are escaping and then turn around and say, no, you can't actually come here.
Yeah, so I think what you were talking about, like kind of like due process for like everyone to like, you know, wait their fair share. To be fair to like the people that are waiting for like 10 years and stuff, there's only like what, 57, 52, like 57 or 52, not like that's like the whole number, but like 57 or 52 immigration courts in the entirety of the US. So like that number I think is from like 2016, so it might be like maybe like 3 more now. But like honestly, those judges, like they can be fired for not working fast enough. They have to see so many cases, like 11 million undocumented immigrants. Like that's like a lot of cases, and because they have to, you know, work fast or they get fired, it's just a really different kind of scenario where like this is definitely like a system that needs to be worked upon. And I definitely think that like adding more of these like courts and like creating like an environment where this is actually even a possible thing to do, like to have like that easier road to citizenship, it just makes more sense than to just completely cut it off or like just send them back. Because like what are they going to do? Like they came to the country for like for a reason.
When compared to their percentage of the U.S. population, Native Americans were more likely to be killed by police than any other group, including African Americans. Analysis of CDC data from 1999 to 2014 shows Native Americans are 3.1 times more likely to be killed by police than white Americans. The investigation also found that cases of African American deaths at the hands of police tend to dominate headlines, while killings of Native people go almost entirely unreported by mainstream U.S. media.
What are you doing? Your water is under attack! Stand up, fight back!
A lot of people don't understand the conditions that these people are living in. They don't understand the alcoholism that's involved within these groups of people just because of the previous treatment that they've been given and all of the other. And you could argue, well, that's on them. Like, it's not a problem that the government can do anything about it. Well, the government did everything about it, and the government is the one that caused it. Because if you have better treatment, whether it's better healthcare, better, less hatred, less discrimination and racism, then it would not be this bad. The rape rates among the indigenous women, like Native American women and Native American men, by their family members, and they can't do anything about it. They go to the police and they do nothing about it because they don't see them as United States citizens, which I also find is a little bit crazy, because if anyone deserves to be a United States citizen, it's them. And why? Why?
In Native American communities, the rates of incarceration and also the rates of the people who go missing, they're astronomical. I think some of the highest in America for marginalized groups. So there is definitely things we can do, whether it's raising awareness or activism or impacting policy that can go towards actually bettering the lives of the Native Americans who are living in their communities. And even something as little as even in your everyday life, we treat them as it's a group of people who lived and then they ceased to exist, as a relic or a myth or a story. And I guess even in your personal lives, for all of us, that's one way to start, is just to acknowledge for everyone that they're still here, they still exist. And even though they're one of the most marginalized groups in America, we need to be supporting them and being proper allies.
I want my family together! I want my family together! We are family now! We are family now! Show me what democracy looks like! This is what democracy looks like!
I think a lot of immigrants are afraid to go out and join protests because we can be, the police is often involved, even if it's a peaceful protest. We've seen it many times. So there's a fear of deportation, and so we have this limited mobility where we can't exactly go out and fight for ourselves. So we need allies to not just say that they're allies, but to also go out and try and change policies and to join us in protest and demonstrate that you are actually with us, not just in name.
It's just understanding that I have the privilege of I was naturalized through my parents, so I was a U.S. citizen by that way. But I know that there are other immigrants, even people that I'm related to, that don't have the advantage of having that citizenship status. So a lot of it's just speaking out on their own behalves, or just educating other people, and first and foremost just educating myself on the issues and using my power as a citizen to vote for people that care about the issues that I care about as well.
So what can allies do for undocumented immigrants to sort of lift up their voices? I mean, I think that the question, that is a question that should be asked to your friends, neighbors, colleagues, fellow students who are themselves undocumented or who have family members who are undocumented, because our goal here should not be to figure out, as an ally, the goal should not be to figure out on your own what the best thing to do is, but to listen to people who are directly affected, because that's how you'll be able to make the best decisions and do something that really has an impact. So there are wonderful groups out there, both locally and nationally, like United We Dream is a national group that was started by dreamers, young people who came to the country as small children with their parents and who are fighting to improve our immigration system. Here in New Jersey, there are really important organizations. The New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice is an umbrella group that coordinates a lot of these different organizations. There are membership-based groups like Wind of the Spirit and Make the Road New Jersey, among others, that formulate their agendas and their campaigns based upon what their members, many of whom are undocumented, decide should be the top priorities. And so I think that would be my sort of broad answer, that it's really important to listen.